Some pretty exciting news started unfolding on Thursday morning slash afternoon. We are recording this on Thursday afternoon, and that was Kevin that the turf installation at the KU football stadium has begun.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think this was a situation where, if you follow Michael Swain, I had the opportunity to speak with Travis Goff a couple weeks ago at Big 12 Media Days about this process and the timeline of it. And I mean, the reality is KU is going to be playing a game there in about less than 5 weeks at this point. So you need turf if you're going to play a football game. So they are in the process of installing that. But something that was pretty cool that I think got a lot of people excited about it, got a lot of people talking about it, was something we had seen a little bit in some renderings of what KU was looking to do with the end zones.
Yeah.
Typically, your end zone, you think just basic, all right, KU, Jayhawks, whatever, right? But Kansas decided to think a little bit outside the box and go with some wheat in the end zones. And Kevin, check this out. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this picture on the screen. Look at that, the wheat in the end zone. So it's blue with the wheat in it. It's a pretty cool setup that it looks like KU is going to be having for their end zones with this new turf.
Yeah, it almost looks like three-dimensional too with the way that they did it. I mean, graphically, it looks great, and I would venture to guess, Nick, we'll probably be over in that area, a week from now or so with camp starting up. But I would venture to guess it looks even better in person. Obviously, KU waves the wheat for scores and all of that, but also, the state of Kansas has such a great tradition with farming and helping to feed the entire country, when you look at it being the breadbasket and all those things. And so, it's cool to really tap into that. And obviously they've tapped into the wheat aspect of it throughout the stadium. I mean, when they talked about the lights going up, it was initially supposed to be sort of a shock of wheat, look going across. And so it's kind of cool to see them continue to lean into it. I'm really excited to see that in person because I think as good as it looks in the picture, it'll probably look even better like once you're there.
Yeah, and for those wondering, the waving the wheats that KU does after scores that Kevin mentioned, that's a tradition that goes back almost over 80 years, I think.
Yeah.
So this is not something that's new. This is not something I saw some discourse from some certain individuals about the wheat and about why KU is using it. It's an ongoing tradition. And I will just say this, trying to gatekeep farming is pretty low, I would say. But yeah, should be pretty cool. The other comment I wanted to make about this, and you can kind of tell in the picture, and obviously you can tell a little bit more from different pictures that we've seen already, is that the seats, Kevin, on the field are going to be very, very close to the field. Like if you are sitting in the lower bowl section, you are going to be right on top of the field, which is, I think, going to be another cool aspect of the stadium. There are other stadiums around the country that have it similarly. If you've ever been to Stillwater, Oklahoma State is like that, where if you're in the first row, you can practically reach out and touch the bench. I think of like Iowa Stadium, Kinnick Stadium is similar as well. So KU is going to have, I think, a similar feeling of being right there, right on top of the field if you are in the lower bowl, which I think is pretty cool. And people may forget that part of the reason why the old booth didn't have that feeling is because there used to be a track around the outside of the field. And so that created some extra space between you, the fan, and the field. Obviously, in this case, that won't be the case. And so that's another aspect of it that I'm excited about for fans is you're going to have a chance to be right on top of the field a little bit as well.
Yeah, when we had a chance to tour all the new stuff, that was one of the things that Travis Goff had said was he said, man, if you had seats there in that north end zone bowl, they were some of the worst seats in college football. I mean, in terms of, sight lines and not being able to really be up close at all. You were a really long ways away from the field. It's great to see them square that off that way so that you can be up there. I think what they've done, I know this is a slightly different topic, but what they've done on the sidelines with elevating the seats so that, hey, if you're in that first row, you're not just looking at the backs of players or struggling to see over football players. You're elevated. And that also, I feel like, is somewhat similar to what they have in Stillwater, where those sidelines are kind of closed in on people, but you're elevated, so you can still have great views from those up close seats. I don't think there are a whole lot of bad seats in the new booth, and certainly that will be more true, I think, once they they finish up on the east end. The other thing I wanted to touch on real quick, Nick, was in a different photo that they showed where they kind of laid down that first strip of turf. They show, you can see the Ring of Honor in the background, and I really liked the way that looked. I thought that popped really well, and they had the numbers up there for the few guys who had their numbers retired. Gale Sayers, John Hadel, etc. But having the names across in that font, in that color, I thought it was a really good look. And another thing that I know, when everybody sees this, when Kansas plays Fresno State in week 0, I really think people are going to be shocked at just how sort of high end and polished everything is. And a lot of us who have had criticism of them not addressing this in the past, in the past, it might have been a Band-Aid, right, Nick? Like, hey, maybe you make it more ADA compliant. You work with the stuff that's already there. By them basically tearing down it and building out this way, you aren't just getting rid of an outdated stadium. You're getting, a grand spanking new, really new, beautiful stadium. And I think I really enjoy catching games at Sporting, and I think the new stadium there with all the things there. You played in the media game at Current, over at CPKC, and had a chance to be there. That's kind of a cool newer stadium as well. And I think this is an elevated version even of those two relatively newer stadiums, where it's going to be a great experience to go to a KU football game. And that's really cool to see.
Yeah, honestly, if you're a KU fan, I don't see how this could be unfolding any better right now for KU. I mean, I talked about it when this whole thing was announced, in this giant project that KU was undertaking, and this I remain true on this thought that if you are going to undertake a project like this, if you are going to take a stab at building, one of the most modern stadiums in the country in college football, you only have one shot at it, right? And you have to hit a home run. And up to this point, with what KU has done so far, I think they absolutely have done that. Obviously, there's still going to be a lot more work to do with the rest of the stadium after this season, right? They're going to play the season in the basically 2/3 new stadium, and then they'll finish the rest of it after the season. But up to this point, I think absolutely KU has hit a home run with what they've done with the stadium. Travis Goff has been out in front of this whole thing, really, I think, doing a great job of showcasing a lot of what KU has done. But I also think, to your point, there's going to be so many things that KU fans they're not going to fully comprehend what this stadium is until they get the chance to go into it in less than a month, essentially. And so I think that's going to be such a cool experience for so many fans to see all the hard work that's gone into it. And obviously there's questions about the price tag, about fundraising, all that stuff. And I think KU has done a great job of handling that and making sure that the project is still on track, because that's obviously a huge part of it as well. So all in all, I am very impressed with what KU has done to this point, and I'm excited to see how the whole thing finishes up in its totality in 2026 when they have a chance to finish up the entire stadium. And also, let's not forget that there's going to be a lot more beyond just the stadium in this project. It is the gateway project. There's going to be an opportunity for hotels. There's going to be an opportunity for conference centers. There's going to be an opportunity for really so much more just beyond the stadium.
The football facilities stuff that we're going to get
exactly
see this year. I mean,
exactly. So
it's off the charts, and Jason Booker deserves so much credit too, because he's kind of been the point man on a lot of this. And I can tell you, Nick, from going through some of the places that I probably won't be allowed in, like the suites and things like that, when we went through, there wasn't anything left on the table, right? Like even the touches were top notch, were really well thought out. And so you would go into a suite and it fit, right? There wasn't something where they said, well, just throw in some random, places with glass windows and it's a suite. No, they really did a great job of putting this whole thing together. I think we talked about, they looked at like Austin FC. I think Booker, if I remember right, has ties to Sporting KC in his past. Arizona State, I think, is another one that they looked at. And so they looked at different projects, kind of picked and chose. One of the things that I've mentioned before that I really like is being on that alumni side, they have kind of little eating experience thing like you have at Sporting, where you've got like the club that you can walk in if you're sitting in those seats and get food and all of those things. And I just think it's going to be a lot of fun to see games, not just for us in the press box, but I think that for fans overall, they're absolutely going to love this experience.
I am expecting, and maybe this is too high expectations for me, but based off of how this project is going, I'm expecting that when it's all said and done, that the booth is going to be a top 10 stadium experience in the country in college football. I mean, I think the expectations, the bar has been set that high from what I've seen to this point for KU in terms of what they can create from a stadium experience standpoint.
Yeah.
Basically, when I say that, I mean essentially everything besides the actual football being played. I'm talking about,
Sure.
the fan experience, the atmosphere, all that stuff, the amenities. I think with what KU's done this point, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that this should be a top 10 fan experience by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's one of the reasons that Sporting had such a great draw after doing Children's Mercy and looking at all of that. It was great to take kids out there. It was great to go with your family, and it was different, right? I grew up going to Kaufman, and I love Kaufman. I'm devastated that they're going to build a downtown stadium. I still love Kaufman.
We don't know what they're going to do yet.
Yeah. Well, a stadium somewhere other than Kaufman, apparently by 2031. But at the same time, like this stadium experience at Kaufman is different than it is at Sporting. And obviously Kaufman holds more people than Sporting does. But Sporting, with it being newer, with them being able to take things like fan experience in mind, there's different kinds of seats, different kinds of viewing experiences. There's, Kaufman has stepped up its food game, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years. But there's, different food experiences. And so I really think that by the time this is all finished, it's going to be a similar thing. And I love that, Nick, because you're not going to have 100,000 people at KU. You're not going to compete with the big house or even, Nebraska's Memorial Stadium or anything like that. What you can do is say, hey, we're going to make this thing 45, give or take a few thousand, and we are going to make this the absolute best experience for those people that we can. And I think that's the route they're going, and I think they've done a great job so far.